Today, what I'd like to talk about is using substitution on a shared contour line to create an active figure-ground relationship of figure-ground reversal. So what I've done is taken three of the example logos that I have on our assignment page, and I'm going to use them to illustrate this idea of substitution on a shared contour. And to do that, I'm going to dissect those or rebuild those examples that are on the page. Maybe you can get a sense of how those were made, the typical techniques that might have been used to make it happen, and how then that may give you some ideas of how you might build a figure ground reversal or make use of substitution shared contour on your own logos. So what I have here is this logo, the V with the oak leaf in it, one of the logo symbols for Vanderbilt University. And what I've done is put in a V over here that's not the exact same V as this one, but it's very, very similar. And I want to talk about that a little bit more. And then I just have an oak leaf that I traced. It's not, again, the same exact one we have over here, but the techniques are going to be the same regardless. Okay, so the first thing is I do want to talk about this typeface choice. So whenever you're working with type in a logo, making a logo mark, and you're trying to illustrate a concept that you're working on, it should be obvious to you that the specific choice of typeface is going to make a difference on the effectiveness of that concept. So in this case, I believe that this is a fat face version of the typeface Clarendon. I don't happen to have the fat face version on my computer, but I have a regular Clarendon, which is what I've used, and then I'm using a bold version of Clarendon. And so I want to maybe interrupt myself a little bit here and talk about how understanding at least a little bit of the history of typography and how typefaces are developed will dramatically reduce the amount of time it may take you to locate a typeface to match, or to locate a particular kind of typeface to create a specific effect. And of course, that's what we're trying to do here. So I happen to know that there were fat face kinds of typefaces developed back during the Industrial Revolution. And these were faces that were noted by the fact that all of their shapes were extended horizontally to make them essentially fatter. And so the biggest thing that happens with sans serif typefaces, when they're bold, there is still a more dramatic difference between the thin and thick strokes in that letter form. So here we see that here, because this is not a fat face. So it's just a bold version of Clarendon. So this is the skinny part, or the skinnier stroke, compared to the fatter stroke in a bold version of Clarendon. The fat face version, even though part of it has been knocked out by the leaf, we can see that it is much wider over here than it was here. And so that's what makes me think this is perhaps a fat face version of Clarendon. Of course, I don't know that for sure, but I do know that if I was looking to create this kind of look, where I know I want to have a lot of black back there to knock out and create the shape of something else like a leaf, then I'm going to look in an area of typography or typeface design that's going to give me that kind of letter form. And that in this case would be a fat face. Okay, so I have this over here. It is not a fat face, but it's a bold version. And I think it's still going to then be able to give us a sense of this idea. But I would anticipate it's not going to be quite as effective because it's not a fat face. So, okay, so let's go forward with this now. So I have this letter form. It is still as a regular letter. So to be able to do anything really with it and make it combine with another shape, I have to convert this to outlines. So I'm going to go up to the type menu and come down to the create outlines option. And notice that box now, the object box shrink wrapped right up around it. It no longer can be manipulated through any of the type controls because now it is simply a shape. When I select it like this, it's a grouped shape because I'm not seeing the individual points on there. And I want to be able to, normally I will want to be able to see those individual points. So I need to do at least one more step. And depending upon the shape, I might need to do 2 or 3 more steps. So those steps, the easiest one is ungroup. So I'm going to try that first. Deselect it, click away, click back on it with the white arrow. And now I do see the individual points on that letter form that I couldn't see before. So if it was another letter like an O or an E that had a counter in it, then I would probably have to do one more step, and that would be go up under the object menu and come down to compound path and release. Now notice that's still an option for me here, but since I can see the individual points, I don't think that's going to be necessary. So I'm not going to do that step on the V, but you might typically have to do it again on a letter form that is enclosing an interior space, otherwise known as a counter. Okay, so I have that shape here now ready to work with, and I'm going to select the oak leaf. And again, I have a similar kind of thing, but not the same. It's not a letter form, but I have an overall box around here. I do not see the individual points. So I'm going to go up under Object, and since it's a picture, I'm going to use Expand. And it's going to expand both the object and fill, and deselect, click back on it with the white arrow. And now I do see all of those tiny little points that make up that shape. So the difference here is if it's an image that I need to get to the individual points, I'm going to use the expand option first. If it's a letter form, after creating outlines from it, then I'm going to do either just simply ungroup, but I may have to go down and say release compound path, depending upon what kind of letter it is. Okay, so now I have these 2 shapes. They're in a format that I can work with. So I'm going to take this, and the first thing I'm going to do is make it white. And then I'm going to drag it over here. And since I can't see this here, it just means that it is behind the black. So I'm going to go to Object, Arrange. I think that should say Rearrange, but Arrange and say Bring to Front. It's now on top. And I can see that actually I have 2 things going on here. I have all of the leaves that's white, and I have the background that's white as well. And of course, I couldn't tell that when it was off to the side. So I'm going to bring it back over here. And if I click away, I can't see it. So what I want to do is use, what I want to do is separate the leaf from its background. And so to do that, I'm going to go back up to Object, and I believe it's a compound path, and it is. So I'm going to do compound path release, deselect, click back on it, and it looks like I'm still getting the whole thing. So I'm going to ungroup now, deselect, click back, and let's see, how many steps do I need to go here? It's not a clipping mask. Compound path, I don't have to do that. I might have to expand it. Let's try that, expanding, and ungroup. Now, I expected that to do it. Okay. Oh, sorry. I did do it. It is now, I think. Let's see. Yeah, it is down to the leaf. Okay, so now we're going to resize it a little bit. And that's too small. Okay, and rotate it a little bit. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time getting with that or tweaking that, but let's go to maybe there and a little bigger. What I'm looking at is this part of the original letter in here. And of course, I wouldn't have this problem if I had the fat face, because there'd be more black. So I'm going to bring this up here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is we're going to do, since that is an issue, and I don't want the leaf any bigger, I'm going to set this off to the side for a moment. And let's just fill this all in with black. See, something like that. Okay, there's our shape. It's going to be black. It's overlapping the V shape. So I'm going to select both. I just marqueed around so I have both the black shape and that one. And I'm going to use the Pathfinder to put it together. Now it's just one solid V kind of thing. So my leaf is hiding over here someplace. I'm going to bring that over. Bring it to the front. Rotate it slightly. Okay, now I don't have to worry about any white that's peeking through that isn't part of the leaf. So at this point, it basically imitates the look that I want. I definitely want it going off the top so that it separates those two like the actual V does. I may not want this part in the middle, the stem of the leaf. If that's true, I'm going to use the white arrow and select those points and delete them. I'm not going to go through all of that now, but I could just delete those. Okay, so I have this in position. The more important thing that I want us to know is I want to unite this white shape with the V underneath it. And it's going to be the exact same thing I just got through doing a moment ago with the black shape to fill in the V that created this. Okay, so I'm going to do it now to punch a hole through that black V. And so when I did this, that was the uniting the two together. This one is, since I'm going to punch the hole through, I like to call this the cookie cutter approach. This leaf is going to be the cutter, and the V is the cookie. And we're going to cut a hole through it. Okay, and the way we do that is select both of them. So I just marquee over the top, and so I get both. I'm going to go to my Pathfinder again, and when I did that first step to get all the black together, I used this one, the unite. I'm going to use this one here and click on it. And what it did now is it cut a hole through here, so this will all move as one shape now. The leaf is not separate from this, it's a whole. Okay, so that's how you do that technique, the steps of doing that technique. Again, our goal was to create a shared contour, but it's substituting a different kind of line in there that's similar to, but not exactly the same as one of the two shapes. So in this case, the two shapes are a V letter and a leaf. Since the V shape had the outside of the V as well as the inside, so it had two lines that were angled like a V. And since I still have this one on the outside and this one on the outside, it's still saying V. The black is still saying V. And so I'm preferencing the shape of the leaf in here because there is no repetition of that outside of the leaf or the outside over here. It's just one time only, so I need to keep that if I'm going to see a leaf. But it is similar to the inside angles of the V, so that's where it's a shared contour, but it's not exactly the line of the V. It is exactly the line of the leaf. But it does mark a change of figure and ground. The figure and ground relationship is figure ground reversal. So this white all around it is ground when we see the V. When we can see this as a leaf, then the black is now the ground for the leaf. Okay, so that's that particular example. Now I'm going to come down to this one. And I've already blocked off part of the logo. And if you've been looking at the assignment sheet, you know what this whole logo looks like. But I've done it this way to start with us so that we are seeing just one figure. Now you could say that isn't there some figure becoming ground already here? And if you see that, you're absolutely right. It's a tiny amount, mostly around the ear. So the ear has some implied line, and we know that implied line is a characteristic of figure becoming ground. We also have a tiny bit of it around the eye, and you could say around the nostril as well. Okay, so there is a little bit of active figure ground going on right now, but for the most part, by and large, this is straight, clear figure on ground. An image of an ape, a white ape on a black background. Okay, so so right now I've masked off those other shapes. So if I remove the mask, so now I'm seeing, whoa, that's not just black out there, it's starting to look like a tree. And so even at this point, there's a shared contour line between the head of the ape, which is also part of the trunk of this tree, and the branches that come out over his neck. So let's take away the rest of the mask, and we can see now the rest of the tree. And we also see another animal, a lion over here, a lioness. And there's and they're doing the same thing. This contour line that's under the chin and comes back up, of course, that's like the grasses and the ground that's under the tree. And then we're going up the trunk of the tree. And again, on this side, same thing on the other side, but it's a different animal. So when we were looking at this example up here, I said the choice of typeface can make a huge difference in the effectiveness of this concept. Down here, it's not a letter form, it's a tree. So the selection of a specific kind of tree makes all the difference in this concept working, or perhaps not working. So you can imagine if we tried to do the same concept of an ape and a lioness facing one another and have a tree in between them, but that tree is now a palm tree, or that tree is now an apple tree, or the tree is now a tree other than the one that we're seeing, it's probably not going to be as effective. So finding the right tree, in this case, is the critical factor in making this concept work. Now it has meaning, because the animals we're looking at here are African animals, or animals from the continent of Africa. And this is a kind of tree that we would expect to see in Africa. And of course, it's about the Pittsburgh Zoo that has this particular, will have these animals there. And hopefully they've imitated their natural habitat there. But the point is, this has to be a specific tree to make this relationship work visually, but it also has meaning because that tree is associated with where these animals naturally live. Okay, I have one more for you. So down here, at first we see, kind of looks like a mask, but it's definitely a human mask. It looks like the mask of a face. And it's pretty much clear figure on ground at this point. We have enough details here, the nose, mouth, chin, and eye shape, that we can say pretty easily that that's a human face. It's a stylized one. We can see that. It's been simplified, but I don't think there's any problem in recognizing it as a face, a human face. So what's missing here? So I've masked this off as well. I'm going to take that away, the mask, and we can now see more things. We see that face mask is still there, but we can now also see that it's part of this person that's swinging a golf club. And so the shape of that face is stylized in a way that it fits the action of this person swinging a golf club. Now, if you pay really, really close attention to this, we'd probably say that if we were only drawing a person golfing, this elbow is really long, isn't it? So here's his shoulder, and it's going way out there. So that's a distortion of the human figure. Just like the stylization of the human face is also a distortion. That eye shape here, of course, that's also been slanted and changed a little bit as just an eye shape, but it needed to do that slight change so that it can also be the space between his arm and how he's holding the golf club over his shoulder. So there's some stylization that happens to make this change happen, where it can be both the human face as well as an entire figure of a person. The cool thing here, though, is that the magic on this one, the illusion, the figure ground, active figure ground, doesn't stop there. So if we look at this golf club, it stops down here, and then these little shapes extend and gradually get thicker going up and over him. So if we just saw him as a golfer, we're probably going to assume that this is like an action motion blur, or something that simulates or tries to represent the idea of swinging a golf club. And it does do that, but it also does a second thing. So and our clue is the name which this image goes with. So Spartan, golf club. So golf club, golf, see, I get that. Spartan. Oh, now I have that clue given by the name to look for something that looks like maybe a Spartan helmet, a Greek Spartan helmet, and that had that plume up above it. So the Spartans, the Trojans, the Romans, during that period of time, they had those kinds of helmets, and we can see that. So that golf swing is also helping us to see that this looks like a Spartan warrior. There's one other part in here that's important. If we look at the typeface that was chosen here for Spartan, it's a sans serif mono weight typeface. And the weight of those lines are similar to the weight of this golf club line, the club, the golf club. And then that becomes a part of this pattern, this progressive pattern that gets bigger or wider as we go away from it. So there's a sequence here that is purposeful in the sense that it describes motion. The size of it also, and the position of it as a curve, also describes the top of this helmet. And then that size relationship down here is repeated in the size of the stroke for the main name of this product, this company that makes golf clubs. So that tends to unify everything visually. Okay.